Welcome to Releasing Your Inner Dragon, where story creators talk story creation. If you have any suggestions or comments, please email them to releasingyourinnerdragon@gmail.com. Your hosts are Maxwell Alexander Drake, creative writing teacher, award-winning novelist, former lead fiction writer for Sony's EverQuest Next, currently writing and producing an animated TV series titled Guards, and Marie Mullaney, author of Songwheel Chronicles and the host of Just in Time Worlds, a fantasy world-building channel on YouTube. We hope you enjoy this episode. We have spoken about Hero's Journey. Let us turn our attention to a specific arc and talk about redemption. Now, in our discussion, I said that I have a particular bugbear here, and it is people who say that Darth Vader was a redemption arc. One good deed at the end of your life is not a redemption arc.
I'll even go a step further than that, because I think you're being too kind. He didn't just do one good deed. He saved the life of his own child. I think Hitler would have saved the life of his own child. Like, that's such a selfish deed that I don't even think it counts as a good deed. And the other thing about the Darth Vader...
You have to be a special... Like, there are psycho people in the world who would hurt their own children. They do exist. But we call them psychotic for a reason.
Yeah. But... and again, to even go even one further, the reason why it cannot be a redemption arc, in my opinion, is Darth Vader murdered children. Yeah. There's no coming back from that. You can't murder children and then actually make me ever give a crap about you ever again. You are burnt. You're a piece of garbage that deserves to die. That's the only redemption that I will get from you, is when you are no longer breathing. And maybe that's my feminine side coming out in me, but I don't care. Like, you're irredeemable. You're irredeemable. If you have a character do something so heinous, you have a character who rapes women all the time, and then you're going to redeem them? No, you're not. I'm sorry. Not happening. Again, it's about fantasy fulfillment, and the only fantasy fulfillment I want for a rapist is to be raped and then die by being raped. Like, that would be my fantasy fulfillment for that. Like, again, if Darth Vader had gotten murdered by a pack of 50 children, that would have been a redemption arc for me. Because the children are redeemed by just stabbing him over and over again. So, yeah, no, it doesn't work as a redemption arc.
Okay. So, I mean, I have a thought there, though. Have you ever read Stephen Donaldson?
I think so. What?
The character is a leper. And then he goes into this alternative
you're talking about that. I thought I recognized it. You're talking about the Thomas Covenant.
Covenant. There we go. Sorry, the name of the books were escaping me. Yes. The Thomas Covenant.
Yeah, I read those though when I was like 11 and 12. That's why I was like, I feel like I know that name. I was like, oh right, the Thomas Covenant.
Yeah. So there, I mean, that character does some heinous things. And yet, there is a coming back. He does come back from, like, there is an arc there. There is a way back from there.
But so again, I was 11 or 12 when I read that.
Yeah.
I don't think he murdered children. I don't think he raped people.
Oh, he did rape.
Did he?
Yeah, okay. That chick, when he stepped through, in the context of the world that he was stepping through, it was a lesser thing, but he did. And then her mother still helped him because he's the prophesied one. That guy was a reprehensible hero.
Yeah, I don't remember it. So my story on the Thomas Covenant Chronicles was, so when I read The Hobbit when I was 8, and I know you have a but, I want you to get there, but this is my Thomas Covenant story.
Yeah.
I literally would read anything. I'd read cereal boxes. I'd read anything. And the Thomas Covenant Chronicles was the first novel that I ever put down. So I read all of book 1 and I was like, okay, nothing happened, but it's got a lot of potential. I read all of book 2 and I was like, okay, nothing happened, but it's got a lot of potential. I read all of book 3 until I got, there was about 80 pages left in the book. And I was only, like I said, 11 or 12. I had never not finished anything at that point in my life. And there was like 80 pages left. And I remember thumbing through the last pages and went, nothing's going to happen. I literally should stop reading this. And so I did. I put the book down and I've never finished it because as an 11-year-old, I realized that it was a lot about, oh, look at the potential this guy has. Look, there's potential that this might do something. And he just kept bait and switching me.
He did. He really does.
Literally, it's the first book I ever put down and did not finish. So anyway, you had a butt.
Yeah. So my butt is, I mean, I won't say I enjoyed the Thomas Covenant Chronicles, but I did appreciate.
How old were you when you read it too?
I think I was a little older. I was in high school somewhere.
Yeah. So age has a lot to do with it as well, because we see the world differently.
Yeah, 100%.
I got a lot of young friends. I hang out with a lot of 20-ish year olds, and so they can do things that I can't do. Where they're like, we'll watch, like they'll come to my class or whatever, and I'll use Finding Nemo, and so they'll go back and watch Finding, because the last time they watched it, they were 6, and they got all this out of it. And then they go to my class where I really only teach the Marlin side, and they're like, I don't really remember any of that. And then they'll go back and they'll rewatch it, and they're like, it was a different movie. I'm like, yeah, because you're a different human being now. Yeah. So that has something to do.
But anyway, for me, there is a path back. And actually, like, have you read Glenn Cook's Black Company?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are, I mean, reprehensible main characters there, like acting like the worst kinds of soldiers in Victory, essentially. And yet there is a path to making such characters interesting and to achieving redemption, even for characters like that. But it is not I saved the life of my adult son, and then I'm suddenly a hero and a Force ghost. Yippee. No, that is not how those characters come back from there.
So you brought this up, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it. You brought this up before we started this.
And sorry, just before you go there, and especially not when your inciting event, the thing that drove you to become what you are, is, I wanted better health care. Because that is the motivation that Darth Vader had. I was afraid my wife was going to die, so I needed better health care. So I killed 50 children.
I mean, he also wanted the power.
Yeah.
He wanted the dark side.
Yeah.
He wanted that added to his arsenal.
But that's why saving his child is not a redemption. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. No, where I was going to go, and like I said, you brought this up in our pre-prep of this, but I'll bring it up here because I think it fits really well. But the Bucky arc in the Winter Soldier, the Falcon and the Winter Soldiers TV series. So I think they could, and you said this, you were like, I think they could have pushed it, and I 100% agree with you. I think they really missed a little bit of what they could have done with that pain. But here's the thing about Bucky. We meet Bucky in the first Captain America movie, and he's like a really good all-American boy. Like he risks his life. The whole reason why he even gets, captured by Red Skull and all that in the beginning, because he literally is risking his life to save other people. And he's trying to live up to, he's a normal guy trying to live up to what this now magically enhanced human can do, and even before then, before Captain America was Captain America, when he was that little scrawny kid and getting, picked on and beat up, Bucky was there to fight the bullies. And because Bucky was a bigger dude to this little scrawny, shrimp looking dude. And so we know how good of a human being he was.
Yeah.
And then we watch him go through decades and decades of being this horrible, murdering, killing, despicable thing. But we also know that he doesn't have any control over it. He's not making any decisions. He's a tool. He's a pistol, and somebody else is holding it and pointing it and pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
He's not, can you hold the pistol responsible for doing that? And so we have that that empathy of like, oh my God, can you imagine being a good person that has to live through this? And so, now that he's regained his independence back, and we meet him in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he's got that list where he's trying to make amends. And we have that moment where he murdered a guy's child for no reason other than he saw his face. He wasn't one of the targets. He wasn't, one of the players in this he's just this guy on, I think he was at a convention for whatever job that he was doing. I think he was a computer programmer or something like that. Like literally nothing
to do with anything.
But he witnessed it, and you can't have witnesses. And so now Bucky has gone back and he's befriended the guy's father, and he's doing things for him, and he's helping him with his groceries, and it's like, but he's got to admit it.
Yeah.
He's got to say it. He's got to get on his knees and be like, I'm the one. I know what happened to your son because I put a bullet in his head. I did that. I didn't have any control over myself at the time. I was completely somebody else's puppet, but it still was me. And like I do think they failed on that redemption arc, that they really could have gone down how painful.
What the tragedy is there is they didn't fail until they only gave us 1 second of Yuri's reaction. That was when they failed, because up until that point, that redemption arc was beautiful. And then they cut from Yuri's reaction right away, and they go to a 5-minute speech about how the senators should do better after the flag smashers had shot up the whole marina. Okay, what was the point of that speech versus the humanity that we were seeing in Bucky's? Anyway, there was a lot of missed opportunities in that TV series. People try to be a little too heavy-handed with certain themes, and that heavy-handedness destroys a lot of storytelling.
Well, it's heavy-handedness on idiotisms.
Yeah.
When you have an agenda that you're trying to get to the audience that's watching this story, but the agenda literally has nothing to do with the story, you're going to fail every time.
Yeah.
And that's it exactly. What it is here. It's the reason why, and I'll go to the safer side, because there is one side that we can absolutely thrash on. It's the reason why Terry Goodkind, in my opinion, failed with the Sword of Truth series, whereas the Chronicles of Narnia succeeds in. Both are pushing a religious agenda on the audience. The difference is one, the story's not about that, and so therefore it's just this heavy-handed, in-your-face, why am I listening to you preach at me? Whereas the Chronicles of Narnia was much more in line with the story. So even though there's this message, this Christian message that the author is pushing on the audience, he's doing it in the way that, because the reality is every story, and we talk
story
about
has
this,
an agenda.
Well, we talked about this in the hero's journey.
Yeah,
you're proving a theme.
Yeah,
you have an agenda. In Lord of the Flies, Golding believes that all humans are born evil.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. That's not what I believe. I believe innately all of us are good people.
Yeah. So do I, but I believe Lord of the Flies. I bought into Lord of the Flies. Like not that I believe Golding's what he's positing, because I do believe that people are good people. But at the same time, the book was very well written.
Certainly. But in my opinion, what happens at the end of that, when Piggy is killed and everybody takes that pause to decide which side of the theme we're going to be on, I actually think that the actual thing that would happen is that, Jack and his boys would go, oh crap, we have taken this too far. Oh, all right, we just killed someone. We need to take a step back. And that unfortunately would prove that all humans are born innately good, which is not what Golding was trying to prove in his story. He was trying to prove that all people are born evil, which is why they went, hey, we just killed Piggy, now we're going to kill you, Ralph. And so that, that was the proving of that side of it. So the reality is, you can say, oh, you can't have an agenda in a story. Every story is an agenda. Every story is about proving one thing and disproving another based off your thematic element. My point is to say, if you're a good enough writer and you understand thematic elements and how to line up the thematic element that you're trying to do in the story with your actual religious, political, whatever, social connotation, then you will have a successful story because it makes.
I mean, 1984 is probably the heaviest-handed social commentary that exists. Like it's a heavier hand than Narnia or even Good Kind, right?
But
it is still a great read. Like I read it again the other day,
But was it fiction or prophecy?
No, it was fiction. And people who call it prophecy need to remember that he was writing it by saying Nazi Germany and Stalin. Like, those are the things he was juxtaposing.
Right.
I know you know.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the thing. You can have, if
you can be heavy-handed.
Right.
But
if your agenda is some social, thing that you want to push, some political thing you want to push, some religious thing you want to push, it's fine. You just have to understand that it has to be the story. It has to be the thematic element that you're doing. The problem with today's things, especially unfortunately in a lot of the superhero genres, the superhero genres don't have those as the thematic elements, and so they're shoved in and they break the story. They actually make the story, not only do they not give you the message that these people are trying to put in, it actually does the opposite, where everyone's mad at the message because it hurt the story. It also hurts the story. And so you just can't, that's the problem that I have with
even Philip Pullman, right? The Northern Compass, the atheist story.
The Golden Compass.
Golden Compass. So I'm an atheist, and I didn't particularly like those books because I thought that it was too much, and I enjoyed the Narnia books conversely, and I'm still an atheist.
Right. Yeah, I don't think he did as well because the religion was the world building and not the thematic elements.
Yeah. And
so the thematic elements and the world building didn't go hand in hand in the Golden Compass as good as it could have been. And so, I do believe that he failed more than what, the Chronicles of Narnia I thought did great. It's still one of my favorite, series. Now I was 8 when I read it. So it's got a special place in my heart. But still, it still comes down to that, to understanding. So getting back to the redemption arc, I think what we're saying, and I think we both agree on this, that first of all, and this is where we might disagree a little bit, and that's fine. I think that to be redeemed, you can't do things that are irredeemable. Because to me, there are just things that are irredeemable, and I'm never going to, as a fan, I'm never going to allow you to be successful with your story in my head because you've done something that's irredeemable. So again, I don't remember much about the Thomas Covenant series. I was 11, haven't read it since, didn't finish it when I was 11. I honestly don't remember even the rape scene because again, at 11, that's not going to impact me as much as when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now. So now, the crime of rape is heavy on my soul. Whereas an 11-year-old, I mean, sure, maybe I understood that it was a bad thing or a no-no thing, but did I really understand the life-destroying event that would happen, from that and destroy not only that one person's life, but the circle that is around that person's life could be absolutely irrevocably destroyed. Whereas now, that crime is detestable to me because of the fact of how much I know how much damage that it actually does. So, and again, that's why, you know, as we get older, we change, we see the world different, we grow. So that's the one thing we might be a little different on. There's things for me as a fan that I just disagree, that there's no redemption coming back from that. You've burnt that character in my mind. But it does need to be, you know, and again, I think Bucky is one of those things, like if you can show me that he didn't have control over it, but it still affected him, he still remembers it, he still lived through it and suffered through it, that is somebody that absolutely can come back from that because of the situation that it was. So it was more of a possession as opposed to something like that. But they also have, and I think what we do agree on is that they have to earn it.
Yeah.
They have to actually go through, you know, a thing.
Redemption has to be earned.
There's one example that I do want to go into because it's my favorite example of redemption arcs. But you had some things to say, so
I'm almost done actually with my second book, and in there I have a scene where Louis, my assassin character, because I do regard assassination as a crime, even if, you know, even if in the context of their world they don't. Like, to me, it is a big deal that you take people's lives. Like, and I think that it should be a big deal that you take somebody's life. So in there, there's a scene where he doesn't take somebody's life who sees his face. He actually doesn't. He pays the guy a bribe, says I was never here, and goes away. Because it is a measure of change of things that have happened. But none of that would have been possible without certain events that happen in the first book that might be seen as irredeemable. So it's, you know, it's a journey.
Well, and it's kind of funny because the example I want to use is a hitman's bodyguard.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you're not going to get a better example of a redemption arc than that movie, because it's actually two redemption arcs. It's two redemption arcs intertwined with each other. So it's Samuel L. Jackson, who plays an assassin, and Ryan Reynolds, who plays somebody who is a private contractor who protects people against assassination. And like, they're fantastic, but they're different redemption arcs.
Yeah.
So the reality is, and by the way, I think it's on Hulu or Netflix or something like that right now. I just noticed that it just dropped. So if you have not seen it and you have one of those services, highly recommend. There's one thing in there that pisses me off from a practical standpoint. Samuel L. Jackson takes a high-powered rifle bullet to the back of his leg, and he has to dig it out, which means it hit his bone. That's the only way it's not going to come out. If a high-powered rifle bullet hits your bone, it shatters it. Literally, it's not usable. And yet he still, even though he limps a little bit, he still runs around on it. He
walks it off.
He kicks somebody with it. It's like, no, that literally the bone in that leg is now just fragmented. The whole thing would just be another joint at this point. So that bothered me. And I'm like, if you just wanted to give him a minor wound, then have it go straight through the flesh of his calf. That would slow him down, but it wouldn't. He could still suffer through it and kick somebody, even though it would be painful. He could still run on it. He could still limp on it. But if you're going to dig that bullet out, that means it hit the bone. That means that bone is gone. Like, you're going to have reconstructive surgery on that to be able to use it. But that's just, I'm an ex-military guy. Things like that bug me. That's literally it, though. That's my only gripe about the entire movie. The movie was fantastic as far as what they do. But the biggest thing, and this, I'm almost loath to say this because it's a spoiler. It's a huge spoiler.
When did it come out?
5-6 years ago.
Okay. So if you haven't yet seen it, this is a spoiler warning.
Yeah, you may want to skip this. But if you have seen this, is really interesting because it's this greatest example of a redemption arc. So the Ryan Reynolds character, when we meet him, he is like the perfect everything. He's the perfect bodyguard. He has a perfect record. He is gorgeous. He's got, you know, $2,000 suits. He's got this hot girlfriend. He's got gorgeous cars. He's making bank. And then after you meet him, after the everyman, and you meet him, he's handing off this Japanese guy that he's being paid to protect, and his whole team is working perfect and everything's great. They get him to the airport. He gets up onto the private jet, and then Samuel L. Jackson's character puts a bullet through the Japanese guy's brain through the window of an airplane. Like, it's a crazy, incredible shot. And later on, you find out that Samuel L. Jackson, like, yeah, it's probably the best shot I've ever made in my entire freaking life. Could not believe I made that shot. It ruins Ryan Reynolds' character's life. Ruins it. He loses his money, his status, his wealth. He's now like
because he's failed, right?
He's completely failed, and he's burnt in the industry. And so now he's taking jobs like the next job that he has is this coked out, disgraced CEO that he's got to get him out of the building because the stockholders just want to basically lynch him in a mob mentality. So it's not even like this high assassin thing. He's just trying to save this coked up, you know, idiot that lost all these people money, and just everything is bad. Samuel Jackson's character redemption arc is completely different. So obviously with the Ryan Reynolds character, it's about regaining the status that he had lost, and that's the redemption that he gets. He moves up through the process of earning back some semblance of the life that he did. Now that's a very shallow redemption, and so that's not really what it's about. That's like the motivating driving factor for the Ryan Reynolds character, because, you know, we all want that. If we fail, we would want that shot, that second shot, that chance. Yeah. But that's very petty. That's very human, you know, or very real world, and not what we're looking for in our fantasy fulfillment. Samuel Jackson's character's redemption is he wants, even though he's an assassin, he literally is just murdering people. He gets paid to murder people. That's all he does. His redemption, though, is he wants the world to understand that he's actually saving the world. He is doing things that make life better. He is killing people who deserve to be killed. They're protected by status and power and position, but they're a piece of garbage human beings. And so his redemption is all about that. It's about redeeming himself in the eyes of the world, because the world, he's a notorious, most wanted person. And so his redemption is about redeeming himself in that light. And the brilliant thing about what they did, and the reason why those two redemption arcs work so well, and Ryan Reynolds' character goes through a hero's journey arc. Sure, he has the two redemption arcs that are intertwined, but he's the hero's journey, and he's the one who actually is the main protagonist that we're following. But the brilliant part of this is you get introduced to two characters, one who's good and one who's evil. And at the end, the good character realizes he's playing for the evil team, and he realizes that the evil guy is the one playing for the good team. And so, like, that is so amazing, the way they threaded it through. And again, you're looking at all these scenes that build these lessons. And so now we're talking about the theme. So the theme for the hero's journey of the Ryan Reynolds character is it good enough just to be a good person if you're playing for the wrong side? If, you know, because he's doing the good thing. He's protecting people from being killed. He's making sure that everyone is safe, but he's protecting human garbage that are causing horrible suffering and horrible murders and horrible things that are going on, but they're doing it legally. So they're not like gangsters or whatever. They're not criminals. These are statesmen and politicians and all this, but they're the worst of the worst, which is why people want to assassinate them. And the Samuel L. Jackson character is taking out horrible, despicable people that are above the law, that can't be, you know, taken to justice. And so, like, watching him through his hero's journey arc and having him grow from the wrong side of the thematic element to the correct side of the thematic element, one of the beautiful things is even though the world kind of goes, all right, fine, you might have been killing some piece of garbage people, the world never really forgives the Samuel Jackson character. His redemption comes when the Ryan Reynolds character forgives him and realizes that he's actually doing the right thing. Like, it's just, when you get writing that just sings, when you get writing that hits all elements and just, again, screwed up on the freaking bullet to the back of Samuel Jackson's leg, but that's a very minor gripe that an ex-military guy has, as opposed to a writer has. And so you should watch it again. If you've already seen it, watch it a second time, because, oh my God, what they did in that movie is breathtaking at every level, from the writing standpoint, character development, character arcs, just, you know, and everybody talks about how negative I am and how much I thrash on stories, but I only do it when they deserve it. When they're fantastic, they're
fantastic.
They make me giddy, because you know, Finding Nemo is one of those movies. The Hitman's Bodyguard is another one of those movies that just nailed it. So,
absolutely,
I'm not all negative. You just got to do your job, and then I'll be positive.
Yeah, you know, I feel much the same way. Like, there are redemption arcs that I enjoy. The Hitman's Bodyguard is one of them. I did enjoy Thomas Covenant in a way. There's even young adult fiction that I enjoy. As I said, I really enjoy most of Mercedes Lackey's books, and the vast majority of them is coming of age young adult stories. But she does them well. You know, it's not Katniss told with another story, or the importance of having a boyfriend, otherwise known as Twilight.
Right.
You know, that they're good characters with good plots that tell good thematic stories. Actually, I know what a redemption arc like really felt earned to me. I don't know if you ever saw a TV series called Once Upon a Time.
We started watching it. We just, I don't know, something took us out of it, and we've never gone back to it.
Yeah, so it's currently on Netflix. So if you want to pick it up, it's there. It's a story of fairy tale characters in the current day and age. And the Wicked Witch is in there. The classic evil queen is in there, right? The evil queen from all the fairy tales. And her redemption arc is gorgeous. It's gorgeous, and it's so well earned. And because it's a TV series, they do like scenes where she backslides, you know, back into being evil queenness, and has to be like redemptioned back out of it, making the eventual payoff when she really is on the good side, like really so fundamental. The same for Rumpelstiltskin's arc, actually. It's beautiful in that story. So
we watched most of season 1, I think, and then for whatever reason, because we were watching it live back when we actually had cable. You know, we had to sit there for
back in the dark ages.
an actual hour that was designated for this one thing. Not the, you want to watch something? Let's watch something. Bunk, instant. So yeah, that's probably the biggest reason why we kind of got off on it. Was just life is too busy for every Thursday at 8 p.m. Like, it's just so hard to do that. And the horrible thing about it is, back then, if you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah.
And like, streaming is just awesome.
Streaming's amazing. But yeah, so that's on Netflix. I've been rewatching it there recently because it really, like, I loved that show. I thought it was so well done. A lot of the elements in it. So, I mean, fairy tales distill down to themes, right? They're distilled down to hardcore themes, especially because they're such short stories. So the series had elements of that hard distilling down, but they did a lot of expansion to fill, you know, a season's worth of TV.
Right.
And did
I'll have
it
to
very
add that to our list. I haven't even thought about that show since we stopped watching it.
Yeah.
But I remember it was interesting.
So that is our recommendation for you: is go watch Hitman's Bodyguard and go watch Once Upon a Time.
Yep.
If you want to get into redemption arcs. So we've spoken about hero's journey, we've spoken about coming of age, we've spoken about redemption arcs. What else should we cover under the character and story arcs?
I guess we're just going to go general character. One of the things that I do preach a lot about that I think a lot of people miss is remembering that the characters to themselves are real. And so I look for things like, so in The Realm, that's that 20 novel saga that I'm writing currently with those 3 other writers. I'm throwing out things like we just broke a story. So we're doing it exactly like a TV series. So we do literally meet every week. We talk about one specific story. We go through the beats. It's called beating out the story. And then when it's done, when we're 100% happy and we green light the episode, it's called breaking it. And then you break it out. And what it means is you're breaking it out to a writer. So a writer is handed the story stub at that point. It's got all the beats already worked out. It's got all the elements, like literally. And that's why really I'm not writing any of these stories. Everybody's writing every one of these stories. And I'm not editing any of these stories. Everyone is editing every one of these stories. So even though, you know, my name is on some of them, it really is all of us have written all of them and all of us have edited all of them. But so we're beating out this story. It comes to this scene and I'm like, and there was this one villain, this one bad guy. And I kept going, look, I really want to kill this guy. I want this guy. I want to kill this guy here. And one of the other writers was like, no, I think we can use this guy. I think he can be this reoccurring thing. And I have some really good ideas. And he threw those out. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But I don't want to kill him to kill him. This character, because this is one of my stories that we happen to be writing. So it's my character that we're doing. And I'm like, my character's never killed anyone. This is the moment. I want him to kill someone here. It's a great growth moment that he's going to have to now look back upon and have to deal with. And even though his life was in danger and he's really just defending himself, it's still an amazing great growth moment for a heroic character who has a high moral compass to have taken a life. It's a very big moment in a character's life. And so I had this discussion with him because, you know, again, they're all my proteges. They're all people that came up through my Drake View training. So a lot of things I use as training moments. And I'm like, remember, you know, your characters are a sum of all the events that we not only let them live through, but whatever their backstory is too. So we create that and that's their backstory and that's what they bring to the story. But now they're going to grow and change based off of these things. And so one of the things that I want him to have to experience is killing someone, because I don't write killing like they do in Percy Jackson, where it's like, hey, look at that, we just killed somebody that has a mother, let's go kill something else that has a mother after lunch, yay. Like, I don't write like that. Taking a life is hard. It's hard on somebody who has a good moral compass. If you're a serial killer, if you're a psychopath, you don't give a is that a curse word? You don't give a crap if you kill someone. But my characters are, you know, heroes. They have high moral compasses. They have high value systems. So taking a life, even in the defense of your own life, is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow and something that changes you dramatically. And so this was the moment. And I was like, so let's talk about that. And so what we ended up doing was it fit really well to add kind of henchmen for this main villain. He already had it in another story. I didn't realize that because that's a story I haven't read yet and I haven't edited. So I didn't realize that the writer who had already written this story had already introduced that this guy kind of travels with a small little pack. I'm like, great. Now he has the pack with him and now I can kill those guys. And then, you know, the one that we want to continue using in the future can survive the attack and go off and do his thing. But it gives me what I want, which is that moment of growth for my character. And so I think that's the thing a lot of writers miss, is that they go, oh, we're going to do the, and again, it turns into the Percy Jackson, where it's like, you know, I kill things and it doesn't impact me. I do things and it doesn't impact me. You know, one of the things that I loved about Joss Whedon, when he was first working with the writer's room for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in the very, like, before season 1 even dropped, he actually said something. He said, look, this is a high school girl that's going to kill something every week. Yeah, she's going to kill a vampire or a demon or a devil or, you know, whatever, but she's going to kill something every week. And so I want us to track that. And I want us to start having her basically experiencing PTSD as the story progresses. And he didn't know at that point how long the series was going to last. He didn't know it was going to last 6, 7 seasons or whatever. I mean, it's a cheerleader killing vampires. It's going to get canceled after the first season. Like, it's greenlit, so there's no way we're making this work.
Yeah.
But he's still like, but as we go through, I want us to really focus on that. And the great thing is, and it doesn't happen in season 1, but once they got renewed and once they found their fan base, and it grows and it grows and it grows, you get to watch her. You know, one of the things about PTSD is you start pulling away from what you love, because it's a protective measure, because you see how fragile life is, and you get immersed in this death and all of this. And so you start to pull yourself away from the ones that you love. And so she does. You know, Buffy actually makes that as she's going through season 2 and 3 and 4 and so on and so forth, to the point where she ends up boning the vampire she's been trying to kill, you know, at the end of the series, because literally it's the only thing she can relate to at that point. She's so broken from all the death that she's caused and been a part of and seen, that the only person that she can literally finally have that connection with is the enemy, the person, you know, Spike, the guy that she's been trying to kill this whole time. She, you know, they bone because and it's such a great story arc for or character arc for this because it's not a story arc, but it's a great character arc, this growth arc in having to deal with this pain and tragedy. And so that's the thing that I try to do. You know, everything that I do in my novels impacts the characters and it stays with them. It doesn't leave them. You know, I write a lot of magic, so it's a lot of you know, they get seriously wounded and it's like, oh well, drink this and you're fine. Like, those are easy because I don't want to deal with, like I said, the shot to the back of Samuel Jackson's leg. If you're going to do that, then you've got to deal with the ramifications of that damage. And you live in a world that doesn't have magical potions that can heal that. So now you've got 9 months of the guy can't actually
of reconstruction surgery.
So like, that's different. That's a different story that we'd be telling. But I do want that emotional damage and that moral damage and that humanity damage to stick with my characters and make them make hard decisions, or make hard decisions maybe a little easier for them as they travel through their story. And so that's the thing that I probably would recommend the most is really tracking the actual effect of having lived through these moments that we're putting them through, because they're horrible, especially if you're, you know, writing what we write, which is this, you know, high-end epic fantasy type thing, that these are big, horrible, terrifying events.
Yeah, you put your characters through hell, and then you're like, and then they have tea.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah, your character's a psychopath.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I mean, it's why I pick on one of the
which is not to say that you can't have psychopaths. Like, I do have a psychopath in my story.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. And those characters are fun.
Yeah. But then that is a psychopath, and it's meant to be a psychopath.
Right, exactly. But it's one of the reasons, the biggest things that I pick, or the biggest thing that I pick on Star Wars: A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, is you have Luke Skywalker come back and find the people who raised him from a child are burnt and crispy and dead on the front lawn, and he's like, oh, sad. And then later that day, the man he met yesterday gets killed, and he's like, no, my world is broken. Like, wow. That seems odd to me. The guy you met yesterday means more to you than the people who raised you. Ouch.
Yeah.
I try to avoid that. I try to, you know, go, okay, his parents just, and I know they're not his parents, but they're his parents. They raised him.
Yeah.
He was a baby when he was given to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got to feel a little bit more than, bummer, dude. Let's go drink something at Mos Eisley Spaceport. That's going to be cool. And he never goes back to him. There is literally no time on any scene ever in the Star Wars franchise does Luke Skywalker ever go, oh man, I really feel sad that my parents were murdered. Yeah. He never mourns. He never is remorseful over it. He literally, it's never mentioned again, doesn't care. Like, little things like that bug the crap out of me as a storyteller, because it's you're just not paying attention. The movie that I watched last night, the kids movie, there's two brothers, the only ones that we've ever introduced to. They're the only family members.
Yeah.
And the main character is the nephew of the good brother and the nephew of the bad brother.
Okay.
The parent. It drove me batty the whole movie. There's no other siblings. They're just introduced as a family of two brothers, but somehow they both have a nephew. That doesn't work. Literally, it bugged me the whole movie.
Okay, so what, did they have a sister that's dead, or?
Then you have to say it in the movie at some point, right? The crazy thing is he looks exactly like the good brother. Same hair, same face, same everything. Why isn't he the good brother's son? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, it drove me batty. The whole movie, I just kept going, who is your father? Who is your father? Is it Darth Vader? Is Darth Vader your father?
No.
It did. It drove me crazy. I couldn't get past it. Because it's just two brothers.
I have such an issue with some of the like orphan things. There are so many orphans in fantasy. It's just it's frightening to me. Nobody's parents live past the point where their children are like, I don't know, 12.
So
and nobody's ever married. Nobody has children. No, like what?
I mean, Dragonlance.
Yeah, sure.
There's examples of it, but one of the funniest things about the Genesis saga to me is there's multiple characters and they're protagonists and all that, but there's really two main protagonists and they're both brothers.
Yeah.
Now it's a family of 5 though, so they have other 5. Yeah. They've got 2 sisters and a younger brother, and then there's a cousin that also lives with them that was raised by them after his parents died. So technically 6 kids in this household, but the story really revolves around 2 of the brothers. And the craziest thing is when I started getting emails about their father. So they're farmers, and their father is this salt of the earth, great moral compass character. And I mean, you met him when you read the beginning of that. I got so many emails off of him of, oh, I see what you're doing with the father. He's actually like this secret wizard mage bad. I'm like, no, he's a farmer. He doesn't do it. He's not a part of the story other than being the rock that raised these. Well, he's the rock that raised these. He's what, what I did was gave the moral compass so that you can see where they got their moral compass from. But they come from, a happily married couple, and they, the parents are in the story, they go home occasionally. And I think one of the reasons I've always thought this, I think one of the reasons why so many people keep trying to look for what I'm doing with their father is because no other family has a father on the main characters. And they're like, well, obviously he's got to be in there for some other reason. There's no other reason to have him in there. Otherwise you just have him dead. I'm like, or he's just alive. like fathers don't have to die. And so, yeah, I've probably gotten, not many, but I've probably gotten 25, 30 emails specifically asking me or telling me what thoughts of what they think that this character is going to, this character's arc is going to be. And it's just funny to me that I got so many people that are so interested in the father that's just a farmer and nothing but a farmer. And like, it's just, I really thought that was kind of cool that they read so much into it. And one of the reasons is, like I said, I think it's just because their parents are alive.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, you wouldn't leave the parents alive if there wasn't some magical thing you were doing with them. Except for, I agree with you that parents don't have to be dead.
They don't have to be dead.
They don't. They can just be there. They can be alive. And the heroes go off and they have their adventures. And it really has nothing. I mean, me and you have careers that our parents don't have. I can have adventures without them and they can still be alive while I'm having my adventure. Yeah. They don't have to be dead. Yeah. But you're right. For some reason.
Yeah.
It does add.
I did kill Louis' father. But I killed him. I killed him with he just had a disease and died. And the only reason why I did was because I didn't want his influence on Louis's life. Like, but from like a child period, you know. So right. I killed him when Louis was like, I don't know, 3.
Right. And there are story reasons for doing it.
Yeah.
But there was story reasons of why I didn't have my, those brothers' characters dead. I wanted to show the readers because, there is one scene where you start 2 scenes. There's 2 scenes where you're actually at home with the younger brother. The older brother has already moved off and he's on his adventure. Yeah. But the younger brother his story starts at home. And there's 2 scenes before he leaves. Actually, there's a couple. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's been a while.
There's about 3 scenes from what I remember from reading it. It's about 3 or 4 scenes. But yeah, you get to see the family life.
You've read it since I have.
Yeah, and it's really, you see where the characters learned how to be what they are.
And then it makes more, or then you get to kind of understand why they make the decisions they make as they move into the world and as they have these really hard death, type things that decisions that they're going to have to make. You get to go, oh, but they were raised this way. So, this is how they would act. They're not too goody two shoes or whatever, because they came from this salt of the earth kind of environment. And so, it's the reason why I did it. So it's a story motivated reason why the parents are alive. But it was also, why are all parents dead in fantasy? Like, how can we never meet their parents? Or, and not all. I mean, in the Wheel of Time, Rand al'Thor's dad is alive. His mom is not, because, that's a part of the story. I'm pretty
in Game of Thrones, there's plenty of parents, sometimes to our regret, sometimes to,
Yep. So, yeah.
Although I will say, you can see with Tywin Lannister why his children turned out the way they do.
Certainly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bad parenting example number 1 right here.
And inbreeding also adds to the insanity.
Yeah. Speaking of parenting, just on a side note, like to finish that thought, when I look at Thor, the movie, if Odin was actually trying, could he have screwed up Loki more than he did? Because he literally created the worst possible situation.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I loved. I am a geek, so not only do I read books and comic books and watch movies and TVs, I am in the gaming industry as well. So I do play a lot of video games. And the new God of War, the latest version of the God of War games, I think it was the 5th. One of the most amazing things about that is the relationship between Kratos and his child, his son.
His child, yes.
There's some breathtaking moments in that game. Some breathtaking moments of watching this, especially because I played the whole franchise. So I've already, as Kratos, I killed my wife and daughter. I've already lived through that where I murdered them. I didn't know it was them at the time. I was tricked, which is why I ended up killing Ares, because he tricked me into killing my own family. So obviously I'm going to go kill him now. I don't care that he's a god. So there's, that's what you get from playing the whole franchise and really understanding the story. But even, there, that he's already lost family, wife and child. But even if you didn't, you still know that he's this broken warrior kind of thing. And watching him raise this son on his own, because, the kid is 10 or 11 or whatever, and the mother has just died at the beginning of the movie. But it is. It's just, I'm pretty sure that the game story is on YouTube. It's worth watching. Yeah, like if you're not a game player, it's worth just watching the story. They did such a fantastic job with the story elements of that game. It's really nice.
Like there are 3 games that to me have got the most gorgeous stories. It's God of War,
New Horizon,
Horizon Zero Dawn, and Ghost of Tsushima. Which I
would throw Witcher into that. Witcher has a great story. Love playing Witcher. Yeah. I would throw any of the Naughty Dog, the Uncharted series. Yes, the main character's named Drake, and it's really fun to play when they call him that name. but great stories. But also their zombie one, which is The Last of Us, at least the first one. The second one I've got a lot of problems with, and have never finished it. But that's the only Naughty Dog game that I didn't finish, was the second one. But the story to the first Last of Us it's one of the best zombie stories I've ever experienced, and you get to play it. But the story is amazing. The characters, what you go through, the decisions you make, and all of that are fantastic. Like Assassin's Creed should have been great, but I just think they just lost the story in it.
Assassin's Creed focused too much on the assassin, not enough on the story.
Well, I think they lost the story. It feels to me like they were like, oh, this is the story. And then they're like, but that leads me to a different idea. What if we made this the story? And so the next game, they just kind of ignored everything and went another direction. And I don't know. I just don't feel like they've ever really found themselves on that. They're fun to play. I played all of them, but the story standpoint, I wouldn't say that they are my favorite.
Yeah.
I am in negotiations right now with a video game company to write a very small single play game. It'll be for the phone. It's an app game, but it'll have about an hour of story. It's probably got about 8 to 10 hours of playtime. But they're looking at me to write the story from it. And I've already, I've looked at their concept and what they want to do. And I've got some really, really exciting ideas. So I hope I get that gig, because it'll just be me writing basically the whole story. But it is a small, like I said, 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. But I'll talk about that more if I get the gig and as it develops and all of that. But kind of excited about that, because it actually has a lot of the Zero Dawn kind of elements to it. It's post-apocalyptic. You start off in kind of a birthing chamber where you were created. So just like Zero Dawn, it has a lot of the same elements of that.
I guess it brings an important point. Even in video games, the stories we remember are the ones with character arcs.
Yep.
The ones where the main character, the character you play, changes over the course of the story. So if you're out there and you're listening to us, think about how your characters change over the course of the story.
Because it's again, those transformations on the physical layer are vitally important. I focus on the invisible layer. So I focus on the thematic elements, because if you don't have those, you don't have a story. But how we deliver the transformation on the invisible layer is by transforming on the physical layer. The characters have to grow and change, which is how we show the audience that we've moved from the wrong side of the theme to the right side of the theme. It's that simple. The physical layer is important, even though I always have it play second fiddle when I'm teaching, because everyone gets that. Everyone gets that we need to blow up a Death Star. We need to find the sword. We need to slay the dragon. We need to save the princess. We need to whatever. Those are all fine. They're fine and dandy. But if you don't lock them into the invisible layer, if you don't lock them into the humanizing elements that are going to connect the reader to what's going on, then you don't really have a story, and you're going to have less reviews. You're going to have negative reviews where they're like, I don't really remember it. Like I said, not a lot of people remember any of the stories from any of the Assassin's Creed. But if you've played the Uncharted series, Last of Us, Witcher, all these other games that we've been talking about, you're going to remember the story of them. Oh, Mass Effect. That's the one you missed. Effect. I was like, that had a great story. I knew there was one more that was a really good story that I wanted to throw into that pile. So like I'm wearing my Doom t-shirt. I love Doom. But you don't play Doom. Like, I don't remember any
Doom
of the story.
For the story.
It's not a story game. It's a fun game to play. It's
like erotica. You don't read it for the story.
It's for the gushy feeling inside. That's all it's for, man. I like that. I love that callback. Callbacks are so important in storytelling. And that was a brilliant one. So yeah, that's characters and developing the character and making sure that they are impacted and that impact stays with them and grows them. These are all things that I feel like a lot of writers overlook, that they let it, it's almost like those events become water on a duck's back. It just rolls off of them and they don't carry it with them. Everything, think about it, the stuff that I'll get real here for a second. You listening, think about the one thing that you've done in your life that you regret the most. And we all have it. We all have that one thing that, oh my God, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it. It's embarrassing. It's horrifying. We would go back and change it if we could. We all have that moment. But it's made you who you are today. It impacted you and has shaped your life. And you carry it with you to this very day. Your characters need to be no different.
And I think on that note, we'll close today.
I think
Thank
that's
you
a
very
good
much
topic.
for listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you will probably like Marie's YouTube channel, Just in Time Worlds, and Drake's courses on creative writing that he offers through Drake U. So make sure to check those out. If you have any suggestions or comments, please email them to releasingyourinnerdragon@gmail.com, and we will be back next week for another episode.